Miriah, you mentioned, another question, follow-up I was going to have to that is, how do I insert myself to try to
Mm-hmm.
provide help? You mentioned, if you haven't seen them for a few days, you could say, hey, I haven't seen you. Hey, how about you come here to this event, or how about we hang out? Um, you know, Everyone has their own journey and their own, like you said, time frame. Are there any, beside, which is a good tactic, and I think is very effective. What, if I'm not getting or a loved one, someone is not getting a response from that, are there anything else they could do to kind of, without being too pushy, right? Like, a loved one, you just want to be like, I want to help and just kind of, but you can't. You got to
Yeah.
go, you got to baby step. This is a very fragile situation. What can you take me through, like, a great process in addition to what you mentioned, so I wouldn't be too pushy?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right to that with survivors, it's really important to not make it feel like a high pressure situation because it can make us really skittish.
Yeah.
And it can make us even turn more towards the abuser because the abuser is so great at calculating a narrative about the loved ones behind closed doors that can then make the victim start to look skeptically at their family and their friends. I also think it's important to remind loved ones that they're not responsible for the situation, and this is maybe the time they should go and seek support on how do they navigate this, because there's really not much that they can do. This really is something that, like, the victim has to come to themselves. So I think that those check-ins, being okay with, not hearing back, which is really painful and scary. And then, it depends on the situation. I feel like there's so many pieces. So if you suspect there's physical abuse, I wouldn't do like a random stop by because that could escalate that once you leave. But saying, oh, I have something for, little Susie, can I drop it off real quickly and then I'll be on my way. So that way you can get eyes on them.
Process you have, or whatever treatment that you choose to provide, it's, I don't say a one size fits all, right? But, like, what are the variations?
So I think one piece that's important is whether the victim is still in the relationship or not, or if there's still some type of entanglement. So say that they still have kids, or they're going through the divorce process. They're still being abused, whether it's in custody disputes or through the divorce process. So you can't fully heal from trauma when you're in the midst of trauma.
Sure.
And that's a really unfortunate, unfair piece of this. So I think that has to be taken into consideration.
And that's for every, like, emotional, physical, sexual, doesn't matter. Okay.
Yep. Legal abuse. And so that needs to be taken into consideration. The words, that's going to be across all types of abuse. Determining the type of trauma treatment also matters, whether there's any dissociative symptoms or if it creates too much reactivity for the victim. We do have to do pretty extensive intakes to make sure someone's an appropriate fit, because they might not be.
Sure.
So that there's smaller skills, techniques that we can use just to help them learn to regulate their body and their nervous system before we then refer and defer them to those more intense trauma treatments.